In today's business and financial news, let's discuss a business from 2003 here in Chicago, the E2 Nightclub.
It looks different on the outside, but it still stands here in the South Loop. The loss of life here in 2003 will be remembered. The second floor E2 nightclub was overcrowded that night when a security guard used pepper spray to break up a fight. The crowd ran for the one exit. Patrons fell down the long staircase on top of one another. People were trampled, crushed, suffocated. 21 young people died in a gathering place that was supposed to be shut down for building code violations. Many of the victims were parents of young children.
For this video, we're going to take a little trip in winter in Chicago. We can risk it on the red line together. KCK has the one-day CTA pass, so we're all riding. This dude sees me out here looking like a tourist filming the train, and yet he steps in front of the camera. That's okay, bro. I do the same thing, sometimes. But most times if I see tourists in Chicago, I try to be respectful and stay out of their picks and bids. They bring a lot of tax dollars to the city, so we appreciate them. Okay, we're almost to our destination. An address that many on the south side of Chicago know even just by the street address alone. 2347 South Michigan Avenue, located in the Motor Row, South Loop area of the city. What have we here? Well, not a lot right now, because the city just demolished the building. So you're looking at what is left, mostly just random piles of bricks. Last month, in December 2024, the city began the demolition of the building that was formerly the E2 nightclub. Between the holidays and the cold weather and various other excuses, we finally made it out to the site on January 7, 2025, only to see that we arrived too late to actually capture video and images of the demolition in progress. In Chicago over 20 years ago, this was the E2 nightclub located above the Epitome restaurant. It was at that nightclub in which 21 people died and more than 50 people were injured due to the E2 nightclub Stampede that occurred on February 17, 2003. According to Wikipedia, panic ensued from the use of pepper spray by a security guard to break up a fight. The club's owners were convicted of criminal contempt for their persistent failure to keep the facility up to code and sentenced to 2 years probation. Let's take a moment of silence to honor the lives lost during the E2 Stampede. 12 women and 9 men between the ages of 19 and 43. Individuals just trying to have a good time during February 2003. They haven't banned TikTok yet, and thank goodness for the TikTokers who arrived on time. What you are seeing next used to be at this location just a few weeks ago.
The E2 nightclub Stampede happened on February 17, 2003 in Chicago, in which 21 people died and more than 50 were injured. The Stampede was triggered by a club security using pepper spray to break up a fight. Several people close to the commotion experienced vomiting or fainting from the spray's noxious fumes, and others, believing the club to have been hit with poison gas in a terrorist attack, rushed towards the exit. The exit was the steep front stairwell leading to the main entrance on the ground floor, the narrow doors of which open inward, a fire code violation. Additionally, while the doors were normally kept open during business hours, they have been closed after the fight participants were ejected. Although at least one emergency exit was opened by a security guard, there were disputed reports of another chain shut. People climbing the stairs were knocked down and pinned by the crowd. As security attempted to pull them to safety, the heap of bodies reached 6 feet in height as more than 1,500 people fled the perceived threat. Rest in peace to all the people that were lost here. My condolences goes out to their families.
And this is how the location used to be nearly 22 years ago to the day.
On the night of February 17th, 2003, hundreds of guests at the E2 nightclub were having a good time when a fight broke out. Security would use pepper spray on the crowd After 9/11, the crowd was paranoid and thought that this was poisonous gas. That's when the entire crowd ran towards the only exit, which was a narrow stairway. This stampede resulted in 21 people being killed and hundreds of people being injured. This would become the deadliest nightclub tragedy in Chicago history. 2347 South Michigan Avenue. This would become an address that many people would never forget. Later that Saturday, 21 crosses leaned against the former nightclub as snow came down on people walking in to see the auto show at the McCormick Place. 1,100 people jammed into a space designed to fit 240. The owners were never charged with this incident. They were charged with violating a court order months before. But had they obeyed this order, this would not be a story.
According to Wikipedia, the E2 nightclub stampede occurred on February 17, 2003, at the E2 nightclub above the Epitome restaurant located at 2347 South Michigan Avenue in the South Loop neighborhood of Chicago, Illinois, in which 21 people died and more than 50 were injured when panic ensued from the use of pepper spray by a security guard to break up a fight. The club's owners were convicted of criminal contempt for their persistent failure to keep the facility up to code and sentenced to 2 years probation. The stampede was triggered by club security using pepper spray to break up a fight. Several patrons close to the commotion experienced vomiting and fainting from the spray's noxious fumes, and others, believing the club to have been hit with poison gas in a terrorist attack, rushed toward the exit. The exit was the steep front stairway leading to the main entrance on the ground floor, the narrow doors of which opened inward, a fire code violation. Additionally, while the doors were manually kept open during business hours, they had been closed after the fight participants were ejected. Although at least one emergency exit was opened by a security guard, there were disputed reports of another security exit chained shut. People climbing the stairs were knocked down and pinned by the crowd. As security attempted to pull them to safety, the heap of bodies reached 6 feet in height as more than 1,500 people fled the perceived threat. While trying to free trapped patrons, E2 guard Ira Navarro heard other clubbers atop the stairs laughing at the fracas, unaware of the fatalities.
The building is not a landmark, but it's located on historic Motor Row in the South Loop. In 2003, E2 Nightclub was packed with partiers when a fight broke out. Security used pepper spray, and in a panic, people ran for the exit down a steep flight of stairs. 21 people were suffocated, 50 people injured on that night. Their families have been dealing with loss, grief, frustration, and a complicated connection to the place where their loved ones died. Some wanted it to remain. Some would rather see a memorial built in its place.
21 patrons, 12 women and 9 men between the ages of 19 and 43 died from compressional asphyxiation, and more than 50 others were injured. A number of controversies arose from the case. A city-issued court order showed that the owners, Dwayne Kiles and Calvin Hollins, were guilty of 11 building code violations, including overcrowding and faulty exit lighting. Police were called to the location 80 times during the 2 years prior to the stampede. Kiles and Hollins had been ordered to shut down the second-floor club in 2002. So just the year before. Their attorneys claimed that the court order related only to a raised VIP section of the club, not the entire second floor of the building. City inspectors then believed the facility's only business thereafter came from the ground floor Epitome Chicago restaurant, which the club attorney said was false, as police officers, both on and off duty, regularly handled the persistently large crowds and club advertisements were common on radio and the internet. During the January 2007 trial, the prosecution claimed the club's security staff were not properly trained. Security guard Samuel Bone testified to using pepper spray to disband a group of 15 brawling clubbers. He said he was indeed trained in the proper use of pepper spray by the nonprofit Illinois Police Reserve Patrol. On November 25, 2009, Kiles and Hollins were acquitted of involuntary manslaughter charges, but were found guilty of indirect criminal contempt for violating the court order to close the entire second floor of the club, and were sentenced to 2 years probation. E2 and Epitome both permanently closed after the incident. On November 16, 2011, the ruling was overturned when a judge ruled that the court order to close the second floor was ambiguous. On April 4, 2013, the Illinois Supreme Court unanimously overturned the 2011 ruling and upheld the 2009 conviction of criminal contempt, calling the court order certain, clear, and concise. The building in which the club was located went unused after the Stampede. Plans were proposed in 2021 to demolish the structure and redevelop the property with an affordable housing development for senior citizens, with a memorial to the victims of the Stampede to be included in the designs. This will require rezoning, which has not yet occurred.
21 people died in a stampede inside a South Loop nightclub back in 2003.
Now, more than 20 years later, the future of the building remains in limbo. And Asal Razai spoke to victims' families and also the building's owner, who are calling for it to be demolished.
I'm the one willing to lose.
A heated and at times emotional public hearing inside City Hall. A portion of the Landmark Commission heard arguments from city lawyers and the owner of this building at 2437 South Michigan. We know the most recent owner bought it in 2021 with plans of making it a 21-story development for seniors. It would also memorialize the 21 victims that died there in one of the city's deadliest tragedies in February of 2003. In the meantime, he offered the building up to the city to house migrants for just $1 a year. The city declined, and he was hit with violations from building inspectors, followed by a lawsuit from the city for not demolishing the building within 15 days of notice.
We've been promising, okay, these surviving families who are wonderful people, because I've gotten to know them, okay, very well. And they're hurting every day. Nobody should be forced to look at where you lost a loved one every day, see their place of that they perished. Shame on us.
Schifrin, now out thousands of dollars after trying to comply with the demolition order, is facing pushback from the Landmark Commission, saying it should not be torn down.
The demolition permit should be denied. And for that reason, there would be an adverse effect if the Motor Road District were to lose this building.
In November 2024, the Commission Chicago Landmarks denied the developer a permit to demolish the building, which is a contributing property to the Motor Row Historic District. However, 2 weeks later, in December 2024, an emergency order was issued by the Chicago's Department of Buildings for its demolition, citing structural dangers of the state of the building. Soon after, work to demolish the structure began.
Breaking news now from the south side, where work has begun to demolish the building that once housed the E2 nightclub. The City of Chicago Buildings Department had said that it found multiple dangerous and hazardous building code violations, which pose an immediate threat to first responders and the public. Last month, a demolition permit was denied amid efforts to landmark the building, which is more than 100 years old.
And you can see that the demolition occurred and was completed. And for now, that ends our update concerning the E2 building located at 2347 South Michigan Avenue. Thanks for listening. See you soon.